Okay everybody, hello and welcome back to my channel. So what I've decided to do for this video is, first of all, I wanted to show the spiral mixer, the ZBX-HM7 1 year on, just so you can all see how the mixer is doing, whether it's a quality mixer, whether it's still working, of course, because I think that's probably more the question on everybody's mind is it still working, and I can assure you it is. And what I'll do is you'll see that later on in the video, and what I've decided to do for this video, something a little bit different, not making pizza. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be baking bread. I mentioned that I think when I did my unboxing video that I use it, the spiral mixer, that is, to make pizza and because I bake bread. So I do it weekly for the family instead of buying it, and what I normally do is I make a ciabbata. So what I'll do is I'll take you through the process of how I do that. In front of you, you've already got the flour mixed in a pizza box, and what I start with is with 100% biga, and it's just a hand mixed biga. I don't add any other flour when I mix it later on. So there's a total of 3 kilos. So what I wanted to do is show the mixer mixing at its full capacity, just to see whether the mixer can actually do the 3 kilos of flour like it's stated on the tin or the box or the label. And obviously that 3 kilos is the flour capacity. Obviously the bowl is 7 liters, which obviously will have to accommodate for the water as well. And even though it's 7 liters, you remember that's to the top of the bowl, so we're not completely filling it, but we want to see can it actually mix that 3 kilos of flour. So what I'll do is I'll run you through the recipe that I'm using in case you want to replicate. So what we'll do is 3 kilos in total. So we've got 2.1 kilos of the tipo, 600 grams of the semolina, and then we've got 300 grams of the tipo all mixed up. We're going to hydrate to 50%. So we've got 1.5 liters of water, and this is how much we're going to be putting in there. 10 grams of fresh yeast per kilo of flour. That's usually, I think, the recommended or standard amount of yeast when we're doing this type of biga. Now everybody does it different. I for pizza dough, I actually use a lot less. But why we're putting in so much yeast? For this recipe, what we need is we need the dough, because we're doing the biga, so that's essentially a pre-ferment. So it's going to be maturing for 24 hours. The reason why we need so much yeast is when we shape our dough into our loaves of bread, we're going to rise it over a 2-hour period. We're not looking to do what we do with our pizza, where we're going to do bulk fermentation, then we're going to boil it, then we're going to let it rise for another 6-8 hours to get that really nice fluffy pizza. What we want actually is as much gases to rise that bread, because what we want is we don't want a loaf of bread that is just going to be flat. We want it to open up as much as possible. So I'll show you that through the process, and why we're putting in this much yeast. I've melted down the yeast. So what I'll do is I'll just pour it over the whole mix. Okay. And then what we're going to do to mix this together is I'm just going to use, we're just going to be using these two tools, a fork and a spatula. And all I do is just mix it with a fork, swirl it around, and just get that water mixing. And then we'll use the scraper to scrape the edges later on. And that's all I do. Don't even have to get your hands dirty. We will shortly, once we incorporate that water, because we're going to have a lot of that dry flour still in the actual container. So we're going to need to incorporate that as well. But it doesn't need to be perfect where there's no flour left at all. Or when I say flour, we want to try and get the dry flour incorporated, but you're going to get a lot of little strands. Doesn't really matter. Those little strands are okay as well, because when you already look, we're getting these big strands. So you're going to get a bit of a mixed bag of fermentation, I guess, with the different shapes, sizes of biga. So don't stress too much. I know I've seen some videos where people stress out. Yeah, it's going to be uniform, otherwise it's not going to be any good, but it will. It's going to work. There's so much of it. Look, if you were making a small quantity, I would say, yeah, you want it as perfect as possible. But when you're doing 3 kilos like this, it's not an issue. To be honest, I've had better results sometimes when the biga looks like it's not mixed very well. So you can see that's incorporating nicely. So with a fork, I'm already scraping the edges to get some of that water that is caked some of that dry flour on the edges. There you go. So it's already looking all right, I reckon. But we'll see what the result looks like once we make our bread. And I'll show you how I do that. Now this biga is gonna sit at room temperature. So where I put it in my house, I've got a pantry underneath our stairs here. The temperature there, because there's no heating at all down there, it's consistent. Normally hovers around that 18 degrees. So you want to put it in a part of your house where you can get that consistent temperature. If you don't have somewhere in your house where you can have it at 18 degrees, even if it's a little bit lower, if it sits at 14 degrees or something like that, that's fine. So if you have a garage, yeah, stick it in your garage. Ideally avoid using your fridge if you can, because you don't want to slow it down too much or block it entirely. Even though a lot of recipes show people putting it in the fridge. If you want to do that, do that. But for this particular recipe, how I'm doing it, yeah, it's usually room temperature fermentation, no fridge involved. But you're going to get a little bit more of that alcoholic fermentation. So when you smell your biga, it's going to have that alcoholic smell. It's going to be very strong, actually. But for bread, it's fine. And if you don't want to use biga, you can also do a pulish. There's nothing wrong with the pulish. My grandmother used to do it with a pulish. But she used to do it using a mother yeast as well. So as you can see, just grab it, squeeze it, and we're just trying to incorporate that dry flour that is still in the container. Just getting rid of all that dry flour. There's not much to it. I'm sure all of you have done this by now. Obviously, when you're dealing with larger quantities, whether it's dough bread or whatever, it's going to be obviously a lot trickier to handle. So let me mix this, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what I do once I finish mixing it. It's all incorporated. So to incorporate some of those little grainy bits that you end up with, you can grab them and squeeze them together. So you end up with kind of like strandy clumps, all sorts. So they're all going to ferment differently. I know some people are going to say, oh, I know you got to incorporate all these little sort of moist little clumps or whatever you want to call them, grainy bits. They're okay. Look, they're so much bigger here that if you think that this little bit of unmixed stuff is going to affect it, I think you're focusing on the wrong thing. It's going to work. And like I said to you, I've gotten some of my best results when the bigger's still even more floury than this. Now, to focus on what we're doing here, the next thing is I've got my gastro tub or Cambro. That's the actual brand, Cambro. This one here is a 15 litre one. Generally, the rule is with biga, you want a container that is at least 3 times the volume of your mix, just to allow it to breathe. The other thing I like about these Cambros is the lids aren't completely tight. They're a little bit loose. So it's actually got the ability to allow some of that air transfer to occur, but not enough to dry out your biga. So yeah, I actually quite like this tub. It's not going to rise in volume, so the fact that it needs to be 3 times the size, it's more to do, I think, with the fact that it just needs room for it to breathe. So you can use a smaller one. Just make sure if you're glad wrapping it or using cling wrap, you poke some holes through the cling wrap with a toothpick, just to allow some of those gases to escape. Okay, so we're going to put it in this tub, and then it's going to go under the stairs, like I said, or in the pantry for 24 hours until we do our next mix. So I'll just dump it in there. There's no requirement where you need the little bits on the bottom or anything like that. I just grab it and I dump it all in there, and I just allow it to do what it needs to do. 1 second. I've got more, I think, on the bench than I do in the tub. Yeah, just pour it on top like that. And then, yeah, just scoop up all your loose bits. There you go. And then you put the lid on top, and that's going to go, yeah, away for 24 hours. So I'll see you back here with the mixer and when we're ready to mix the biga into bread. All right, thank you. All right, guys, here we are. So we're set up and ready to go with mixing the bread. So I've got the ingredients in front of me, which we'll go through in a second. So here's the mixer, 1 year on, or just over a year of owning it. I guess if you guys are wondering, how's the mixer doing, or is it a worthwhile mixer to buy? Look, it's still just as good as the day I bought it. I've had no issues with it at all. Obviously, there's the learning curve when you buy anything. Learning how to mix and get that result consistent. But you can see the paint hasn't chipped or hasn't corroded or anything like that. It's still like the day I got it. There's your controls, your 10-speed dial, emergency stop, and there's your on and off button. When you press it, you can see glow. It glows blue. But yeah, it's been performing fantastic. So then you can see these vents here, I think I've covered before. They're just like, they're not even vents. It's just more like a, what do you call it? Like a cosmetic thing, really. Inside the bowl, you can see the hook. You can see the breaker bar. The breaker bar on this one it's got rounded edges, but it's a square breaker bar. It's not like a narrow breaker bar like some of the other mixers you see. And then underneath it's just a solid piece. There's no hole on the actual bar itself underneath. There you go. There's the directional arrow, so it lets you know which way it's spinning. And this is the other side. Same design as the other side. Obviously there's no control panel or anything here, so it's a little bit blank. And then there you go. And that's the vents from behind where the motor actually breathes. But yeah, it's been a great little mixer. It has worked, like I said, every time like a charm. The one thing actually I want to point out, you can see just in the background there where the flour is, that stainless steel table that I purchased not long after I actually purchased the mixer, just because I don't keep it on the bench tops, because I like to just bring it in and out from where I store it when I need it. I used to mix on that table, as you may have seen on my other videos, and it wasn't until, well, actually, I was having issues with the dough not turning out right, and it wasn't rising properly, and I thought I was doing something wrong, or because initially when I got the mixer, it was mixing awesome and I was getting incredible results, and then all of a sudden I was struggling to get those results, and I was playing around with the water, with the different ratios of ingredients and stuff, because I thought I was doing something wrong. But as it turns out, because one day I decided to make a video and I wanted to make sure the mixer stayed still, and I put it back on the bench where you see it now, and all of a sudden that dough from that day turned out just like it did at the beginning. So as it turns out, somehow the movement of that table when the mixer mixes is causing something to not go right when I'm with the mix, and actually you don't get the results you should. So I'm not sure if it's the rocking of the table or what is causing it, but I'm assuming it's going to be the rocking of the table is causing it to mix not right. And it's funny because you do hear this oscillating sound when it moves on that table. So if you're doing something similar, give that a try and see if it makes a difference. But for some reason it does. So I've stopped mixing on that table. I just bring it out and I just put it on the bench every time now that I use. So that's the one thing that I've learnt from having the mixer. And I would assume that if it's doing it on mine, it's going to do it on any other type of mixer or brand of mixer. Yeah, which who would have thought that movement would affect the actual mix? But on here, on the bench, it's actually really stable, and it's actually even quieter. It actually gets a lot louder when it's on that table, or the stainless steel table. But anyway, so what we'll do is we'll go back to the ingredients now, and I'll take you through those. Just bear with me for a second. I'll set up my camera on the tripod. Okay, so these are the ingredients we're going to be using. So in the background, you can see the biga. So that's the total of 3 kilos. So it's nice and fermented 24 hours later. Here we have the mother yeast, which we prepared yesterday as well. So you can see it's really foamy and it's right up to the top. It was actually a little bit higher earlier this morning. It's just started to collapse slowly. But we're not using it as a yeast, so we're not needing it to be at the peak of its strength. Then we have diastatic malt. If you don't have that, don't put it in. Obviously, you're not going to put it in, but don't worry about it. Don't put something else in place, like honey or something like that. We're going to get 25 grams of salt for every kilo, so there's 75 grams of salt here. And then we're going to add another 10 grams of yeast to the, 10 grams of yeast for every kilo. So there's a total here of 30 grams of yeast. And then we're going to bring it to 75% hydration. So what I'm going to do is when we put the biga in the mixer, which I'll do shortly, when we start putting our water, we're going to do it slowly as we would. So what we're going to do is then we're going to check how wet the dough is, because sometimes we can't get it quite to 75% hydration. And I don't want it to be a wet and sticky dough, because what I need the bread to do is rise higher, not spread out. And I'll show you how we're going to set that up once we ball our loaves of bread. So it does that, because you want it to be usable, because I use it for sandwiches. I can't have a flat bread because then it's not really usable. You'll have to slice it up and make like a focaccia style type bread, but I want to slice it because I want to be able to toast it as well. So I'll show you how I do that. So bear with me for a second. And I'll put the biga in the mixer, and then we'll go through the mixing process. Okay, so the biga's in the mixer, so you can see it's quite full. There are gaps everywhere, so once it starts mixing, it does settle down into the bowl. And like I said at the start of the video, I wanted to show the mixer mixing at its full capacity. For anyone that hasn't got this mixer that is considering it, that way you can see, can it do that large quantity like it's advertised to do? Obviously I can tell you that it can, because I've done it many times. So, all right, so we've got the total of 3 kilos of biga, which is hydrated at 50%. All right, so what we're going to do to this, now we're going to add our diastatic malt. So we'll just pour it in like that, just because it's going to be mixing for a while. You don't have to worry about it too much. With the yeast, also, I just chuck it in. I don't even bother melting it. I do when I make the biga, but I don't when it's mixing. So I'll just put it in different spots, because it's going to be swishing around the bowl for so long. It's actually going to melt it for us anyway. And again, the reason why we put so much yeast is because we need this to rise within 2 hours. And also we want it to create lots of gases, so it grows upwards. We're not looking to do what we do with our pizza, where we only put in like 1 or 2 or 3 grams of yeast, and then, you know, we're doing the bulk fermenting overnight, or you know, we proof it in the fridge, and we want that slow rise and maturing of the dough. So what I'll do also, but you'll see it throughout the process as I do all this. And we're also going to add the mother yeast. So when I say the mother yeast, that's what I call it, or you can call it a sourdough starter. You can see how much it's grown. And it's got that, it's not very strong smell, but it's got that yogurty, yeasty smell to it. So it's because it hasn't had time to collapse and create that water on the top like it would if it was in the fridge. It doesn't have that sort of pungent, strong, sort of acidic smell to it. So all I do is I just pour it in. So you can see, look at it. So it's like Polish. So it's all full of air. So it's but this has 0 yeast in it. This is natural yeast. So I made this just with water and flour. So we'll pour that in there. There you go. So we'll just scrape the container. Just make sure we've got it all in. There's not a lot of room in here, so don't stress if it's not sort of evenly distributed. It's a bit tricky when you've got so little room in the mixer. So here we go. Try and get as much of it out as we can. Just don't want to waste any. There you go. Alright, so what we'll do is we'll close the net and I'll start the mixing. So we'll start on 3. Actually, before we start, what I'm going to do also is I'm going to pour in a bit of the water. Just to help break down that biga. Alright, and on 3 we go. So you can see as it's mixing, it's starting to collapse down into the bowl. And then we'll incorporate all those ingredients. We're going to be mixing for so long that, yes, there's not going to be a problem. And what we're looking to do here is just the same as we do with our pizza dough, is just build a good gluten structure to the dough first, and then we'll just continue with adding the water. If you see that it's a bit dry and it needs a little bit more water, add a little bit more. But you'll learn this as you go along. Yeah, and if you see that it needs a little bit more water, just to help it melt a bit more, just add a bit more. I'm just going to add a little bit more, just to help it along. And now we'll just wait. And I'm not using any refrigerated water. You can if you want to. It's here in Australia, it's still winter, so the water out of the tap is actually quite cold. So there's no problem. Plus, being colder, yeah, it's not going to run the risk of heating up the dough too much. The other thing I want to point out while it's mixing is, and this is an important thing to consider when buying a mixer, is the actual motor itself and the power. I'm not sure if you can hear it through the microphone, but the motor is not struggling at all with the quantity of dough that is in the bowl right now. And considering that it's also biga, and biga is a drier mix, you can hear the motor's more than capable of handling that. That's important, because the last thing you need is to buy a mixer and then the motor struggles to mix and you can hear it fatiguing, because then that also can cause a problem where you might burn the motor out or break the gears or the belt or however it's powered. You know, if I was to do the exact same thing, obviously with the quantity that is relevant to the KitchenAid, you can hear the motor straight away struggle as it's trying to break the biga up. Whereas you don't hear any of that labouring out of this. It's the same as if I was mixing a 1 kilo batch. So you can see it's starting to form that pumpkin. So what we'll do is we're just going to let it keep mixing until it gets as smooth as it can, and then we'll start adding a bit of water, and then we'll add the salt. And then we'll increase the speed once we get to the salt, because what we want is the mixer to mix as long as it can at low speed, because mixing at low speed actually minimizes the heating up of the dough. It's when you increase that speed that's when the heating up occurs quite quickly. So always try and do this part, if you can, at a lower speed. And yeah, and minimize how long you're running it at a higher speed. And you should be right with the dough not hitting high temperatures. But you can see it's starting to smooth out a bit more. And what I'll do is I'll bring it down a little bit so we can see a bit closer into the bowl. Just bear with me for a second. So you can see a little bit better how you can see that it's more than able to hold the 3 kilos of flour. Obviously we haven't added the rest of the water. But as we add the water and the salt, you'll see the volume is not going to change that drastically where it's going to fill the bowl up that much. So in reality, if you really wanted to push it a little bit more, you could actually probably mix maybe, yeah, a good 3.5 kilos quite easily. Considering that I've got there also the mother yeast, or the sourdough starter, which has pushed us over that 3 kilos, but just slightly there. And the other thing is also, when I use the sourdough starter, I normally don't count the starter in the hydration at all. I just put it in there, and that's it. So you can see it's starting to smooth out a bit better. What I'll do is now that you've sort of seen, I'll see if you can see. There you go. So you can see inside the bowl as it's mixing. I just want you to see, so you can see that it's got plenty of room. Because I remember when before I purchased this mixer, I think it was in the actual Alibaba site, where someone left a comment saying that it wasn't mixing to its capacity like it was advertised, and I thought it was a bit strange, but it can. I do it all the time, so I can easily mix that 3 kilos of flour, and that's what that that spec refers to, is the quantity of flour, not including the water. So what I'll do is I'll rise the camera back up, and what we'll do is we'll start pouring in the water. I'll see if I can get I think that's a pretty good view, where you can see how the dough's smoothing out now. So what I'll do is I'll put a little bit more water in there, and shortly I'm going to start adding the salt. So we'll get a bit more water incorporated in there. Okay, and now what I'll do is I'll add the salt now, and then we'll start mixing it nicely in there. Just put it on the top, and then what we do is we just pour a little bit of water just to help them melt. And of course, once we pour that salt in there, that's what starts helping that dough create that elasticity. So just bear with me for a sec. So I'm not sure if you can see this on the camera, but it's already becoming more elastic. You see it's starting to tear like that. That's a sign that yeah, the salt's starting to help that gluten strength build up. So we'll pour a bit more water now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll start increasing the speed now. So that's on 4. Because what we're going to do now is try to get all that, the rest of the water incorporated in there. But I'll bring it up to 6 in a second. And see on the bench now, it's very stable. It's also a lot quieter. Alright, so let's bring it up to 6. And we want to do this quick because, again, like I said to you, the longer we run it on a higher speed, the more we're going to run the risk of heating that dough up. So you can also start to hear that popping, which usually is a pretty good indicator that it's built a good gluten strength to the dough. So what I'll do in a second, I'm actually going to put it at full speed just to get all this water absorbed, because we've still got a bit of water here. Actually got, how much do we have? I think over Yeah, just over 100 mils left to incorporate. Yeah, and you can see it's still not sticking. So it's mixing quite nicely. Also, the other thing, see how there's no tears to the dough, which tells me that it's forming a good gluten strength to the dough. Usually, if it starts tearing, it's a pretty good sign that your dough is not right. So you've gotten something wrong along the way. So far so good. It's smoothing out. So add some more water. And that's one thing you'll notice as you're making your dough. Lower hydration. You know, when we go to ball it on the bench or the counter, your dough will get signs of that tear a little bit. But when you get to a higher hydration, 70 or above, usually you shouldn't see any signs of like those stretch marks or tears. And as you can see, as it's mixing, it's very elastic and smooth, especially as it comes around from the hook. So pour in some more water. We're nearly there. One more pour, and then we're there. So I'm going to go full speed. Let's give it a go, see what it looks like. There you go. That's on 10. So we'll just get the rest of the water absorbed. There you go, all the water's in now. So we're at 75% hydration. So we'll give it a couple of minutes at full speed and then we'll stop it, because I think it's pretty much ready to go. We just want the dough to, absorb all that water, dry out. So you can see it's already absorbed that water, and yeah, look at that. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop it. We don't need it this to overmix. So just give me another second or two. There you go, and we stop it. The reason why we're not going to mix it anymore is because it's absorbed that water. Making it mix for another minute or two actually doesn't do anything beneficial to the dough. Because what happens is, if anything, you start running the risk where it starts releasing that water back on the surface of the mix. And look, every mixer mixes different. But this particular mixer, I think because the breaker bar is pretty efficient with creating that strength. Yeah, if you run it for too long, it actually starts undoing all the good work that you've done. So as soon as you've got it all incorporated and that water is absorbed, you want to stop it. If you've got a different mixer, I've noticed that other mixers, I'm not going to mention brands because, but you know, the ones with the flatter breaker bar have to mix for a very long time to be able to get to this stage. And I'm talking about a long time, 20 plus minutes at high speed to build that gluten strength like this does. This is actually kind of the opposite. The longer you run it, the more you undo the hard work you've done. So you kind of want to pour your water at a high speed once after you added the salt, like I did. But yeah, you want to do it quickly. So you want to be doing it for no more than 5-6 minutes if you can, and it builds a good gluten strength, and it doesn't damage the structure of the dough in any way. So what we'll do in a minute, so we're going to let it rest in the bowl for a couple of minutes, and then we'll come back and I'll put it on the counter. All right, so the dough's had a few minutes to rest. I did a little bit of housekeeping while I was waiting. So what you're going to need, just get yourself a serrated bread knife or something that will cut. Unlike doing a 1 kilo amount of pizza dough where you can easily pinch it, there's just too much to do that, and you don't want to pull on it too hard where you can damage the dough. So what we'll do is we'll wet our hands a little bit just to minimize the dough sticking to our hands, and then we'll cut it. And we'll grab it. So it's actually very elastic, but I'm just going to cut it. It comes off the bowl nicely. But like I said, there's a lot of dough here, so it's not that easy to just grab in one large amount. Oh. Yeah, and try not to scratch your mixer. It's actually not sticking too much to the hands. So I actually could do this without wetting my hands, but I'm used to doing it like that now. And then, yeah, just put it, try not to just pile it on top of each other. Try and put it around the outside. Like that. And what I'll do is, once I'm done, I'll show you the inside of the bowl, how clean it is. It's actually, look at that. And the smell is incredible. Just got to get a bit of this off the hook. I've got a bit of dough twisted on the hook. Should be able to pull the rest of it out. Wow, smells so good. And the next step, once we've got the mass there, what we're going to do is we're going to need to do some stretch and folds just to strengthen that dough a little bit more. We want to make sure that it doesn't relax too much, and being 100% biga, it tends to have that effect where it wants to relax. So excuse my arm in the way. There you go. So just give me a sec. I'm just going to wash my hands, and then I'll let you see inside the bowl. But before actually, let's see if we can show you now. So you can see it's actually pretty clean. That residue is actually more from my wet hands because it's actually the water. Otherwise, if I hadn't wet my hands, I think it would have been a bit cleaner. But you can see it's actually pretty clean. So over on the bench, so excuse the bumping of the camera. What we're going to do now is just do a couple of folds and ball it. The other thing is get yourself a large enough container. This one's pre-oiled as well, where we can put the mass, because with all that yeast, this is going to rise quite quickly. But we're going to do these stretch and folds every 15 minutes for 1 hour. So we'll ball this up first. And again, you can just grab it. And you can do these kind of folds on it. just like we do with our pizza dough. Just ball it. There's a bit of residue on the bench, but just grab that and then just ball it. It is a bit wet. There you go. It's really sticky. There you go. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put it in that container. There you go. There you go. So what we'll do is we'll cover it with a bit of Glad wrap, and then we'll come back to it in about an hour. Or sorry, we'll come back to it every 15 minutes for the next hour. All right, so we've done a bit of housekeeping. It's been about 15 minutes. And we're going to do our first set of stretch and folds since we balled the dough. So what I'll do is I'll take the wrap off. And I'm just going to wet my hands a little. Still going to be a little bit sticky. And all we're going to do is just grab it, just pull on it, and just fold it. And do the same here. And just and then just try to lift it up. There you go. First set of stretch and folds. It's not easy. When you see other people do it on the video, it looks easy, but when you've got this much, actually it's not that easy. So I can only imagine what it would be like if you had like a 25 kilo amount, like you see some professional pizza makers mix a full bag of flour. It's definitely a workout. And this is just 3 kilos. So we'll cover it again. The other thing, I'm not sure if you can tell on the camera, but the volume of the dough is already increased. So because that's rising quite quickly. So we're going to let it sit here for 15 minutes. I'm not going to show you the whole process of the stretch and folds. We'll come to it once it's at the end. So I can show you the volume and how we're going to ball it. All right, so we'll see you then. Okay, stretch and fold time again. All right, we've got a visitor. All right, so let's do this one. And then after these stretch and folds, we're going to do it on the counter and ball it like we do with our pizza ball. And then, yes, let's start shaping it. So I can tell you that it's definitely increasing in volume quite quickly, as I was aiming for when we added all that extra yeast. Yeah, we don't want to do anything too drastic now because it's really puffy now. So I don't want to take too much of that air out of it. Yeah, that'll do. So yeah, starting to form bubbles as I move it around. So I'm just going to give it another 15 more minutes. Yeah, so as you can see it, I've just done light stretches, but it's staying all puffed up because all that air and gases are starting to build up in the dough. So in 15 more minutes, we'll come back and we'll give it one last bowl on the counter, and yeah, then I'll show you what I do when I shape it and where I put it to rise. And this is going to rise pretty quick. Within 2 hours of shaping it, it's going to be ready to bake. Okay, so I'll see you shortly. So here we've got the mass, which we're going to be using to make our bread with. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut it up into our portions. Now, for a loaf of ciabbata, I like to use 600 grams per loaf. You can do what you want. If you want to make your rolls, for rolls normally 150 grams per roll is more than enough. And I can tell you that 600 will make a good sized loaf. Yeah? So don't go crazy thinking it's too small. I need to make it bigger than 600 because it rises quite quickly and it expands. And you don't want a situation where then you end up with a loaf which is double the size of what you actually need. So portion it off, weigh it. Once you weigh your first one, you'll work out how big it is. It's quite airy, so a little bit more. If your scale's not big enough, just put a plate on it. There you go, 600 exactly. And then what we'll do is so this should make about 6-7 loaves, I think. And it's already very airy. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly cut it up. I'm not sure if you can see what I'm doing. I'll bring it over a bit more. So we just, 600 grams, 588, 597, good enough. 597. We'll just put it aside and then I'll show you what we do. Just put a bit of flour on there just to help me in case it wants to stick, but it's already building a lot of air. You can see how puffy this is already. A bit too much. It's 700. And I'm going to show you also once I've cut these up to size, how they progress as they rise, and I'll show you what I do exactly. So there's no guessing on the process that I adopt. And then I'll show you what I do to shape this bread. And look, there's no, when you first start out, you're going to do things a little bit different. You might not necessarily follow a correct process, but I don't think there's any stress with bread, to be forgiving. I think you can get away with a little bit more than you would with pizza dough. So what do you have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, it's a bit more than 6 loaves. I normally make bread rolls as well, but I'm not making bread rolls today. It's just going to be ciabbata loaves. Because we're going to give away some to friends and co-workers. Yeah, that's another 600 there. Because we've put so much yeast in this, it is just already puffing up so much. And if we've got anything left over, we'll just make a couple of bread rolls if we can't get a full loaf. It looks like we're going to get a few loaves here. And it smells amazing. The smell is incredible. Alright, we'll move that. 600. Let's see what this weighs. Yeah, 286. Let's halve it. Let's make it 145. And we'll make 2 little rolls. 141. There you go. And these are just going to be 2 little rolls. So we'll move the scale out of the way. And I'll show you what I'll do. I'm only going to show you on a couple. So what I like to do, just get a bit of flour in your hands, and then I like to grab it, and then what we'll do is we'll ball it. But what I do is I try to tuck it in. I'm not sure if I can. What I'm trying to do is turn it into like a baguette. But then what I try to do is roll it like a sausage onto itself, and then get the ends in as well. So fold them. So see what it looks like? Actually, hold on. It's out of. See what it looks like? It looks like a small worm. So in centimeters, that's probably about 20 centimeters, if that. And then what I'll do is I'll grab it. I'm going to put it on the tablecloth, but I'm going to show you what it looks like in a minute. One sec, I'll bring the camera over there, but what we'll do is we'll shape another one. So we'll grab another one and we'll do the same thing. We'll just stretch it a bit. And then what we'll do is we'll tuck it in like a sausage. If you can see that. Just roll it like a sausage. And then we'll get the ends. And we'll just tuck it in. Just push it into itself. And then get the ends. So you don't want to have pointy ends. So you want to make it like that. Like, you know what, right now, you know what it looks like? It just looks like a roll. Just a bread roll for one person. That's what it looks like. So if you look at my hand, it fits on one hand. So I'm going to place this down, and then I'm going to bring you over, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so I'm over where I've put the freshly formed bread. So as you can see, what I've done is I folded the edges up to divide each loaf of bread. So this is going to allow this to rise. So it will spread out. So what we want to do is we want to put them close to each other because we don't want it to spread out. What we want to do is we want it to rise upwards. So that's why you want to have a little bit of this sticking up and floured. See how I've lifted this up? So as you go along and you place your loaves, you bring your tablecloth closer and closer because obviously as you're folding it. And then what we're going to do is then we're going to fold this over. So what I'll do is I'll finish all of it and then I'll come back to this and I'll show you what we do next. But that's essentially what we're doing. So right now they look just like I said, just a one serving bread roll, but it's not. As it expands, it will come out this way, and they'll get full size loaf. So you'll see that later on. I'll show you that process later. Okay, so it's been about an hour since we've shaped the bread rolls, or the loaves of bread. Sorry, I keep on calling them bread rolls. The loaves of bread. So let's have a look at what they look like an hour on. So you can see that they've increased in volume quite significantly. So I'll just uncover it all. So they've almost, I would say they've doubled in size actually already. So you can see, like if I put my hand there, when I put them on there, they were pretty much fitting on my hand, because I said they were the size of a bread roll. Now that they're almost a full loaf of bread. So we're going to let them rise for another hour at least. The little bread rolls have increased in size as well. But you can see, yeah, how much bigger they've gotten already. So we'll give them another hour and then we'll come back and visit them and see what they look like. So they should be, yeah, quite substantially larger than what they are now. Okay, we'll see you in about an hour. Okay, so now we're 2 hours into this bread rising. So as you can see, it's nice and puffy. It has more than doubled in volume. As you can see, all the loaves, even the little bread rolls. Now what's going to happen when we put this in the oven, it's going to expand even more. So it will become a full loaf. And that's why we want to put them a bit close together, because what we wanted to do is to have them rise up as opposed to spread out open, because if it does that, then you don't get a proper loaf. It gets flat and you can't really use it for too much. It's edible, but you won't be able to make sandwiches out of it if you want to slice it. Yeah, so that's why we do that. So you can see the result, how tightly packed they are together and how fluffy they are. They are full of air, and they're also really nice and tight. You can actually feel it's firm. It's not a loose dough. So what we're going to need now is, just bear with me for a second. I'll show you what the tools. So I don't actually have a razor blade. So what I'm using is this kind of knife. I'm just going to wet it and I'm just going to score the top of the dough. I keep on forgetting to buy razor blades. As far as tools, we've got the peel from a pizza oven just to launch it in the oven, and obviously we need some flour, and you're going to need the spray bottle, because what we'll do is when we place it on top of the pizza stones in the oven, we will be spraying the top of the bread just to allow a bit of steam to release. The reason why we do that is that way it doesn't form a crust straight away, and it allows within the first 10 minutes of baking for the dough to expand. Because if it forms that crust, then what happens is that as it wants to rise and get bigger, it splits, and then you'll get these tears in the bread, which is not really ideal. So you want it to expand within the first 10 minutes. Temperature on the oven, 240 degrees Celsius. And what I'll do is I'll move over to the oven once I launch the bread. And the technique to get this bread, so what I'll do is let's do this now quickly. I'm just going to flour my peel, and then I will show you how I do this. So I'll just put a bit of flour on the peel, just sprinkle a little bit, not too much. And then what we'll do is we'll sprinkle a little bit of flour on the top of the loaf. And then what I do is we grab it from this side, you put your hand in your palm there, and as you raise it, or raise it, whatever, you put it on top of the peel. And what we'll do, if you give me a minute, sorry, I'm just working in cramped space. So you can see the loaf of bread, it takes up the whole peel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and cut it just like that. As you can see, it cuts. Just a couple of cuts and another one here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch this one. I'll bring the spray bottle with me. Just bear with me for a sec, and once I've got, because I can only bake 2 loaves at a time. Once they're in the oven, I'll show you what they look like in the oven. So as you can see, I'm just cooking in just a general domestic home oven. I've got stones in there. I've literally just launched the 2 loaves of bread. So what we're going to do is spray a bit of water on top of the loaves. And what we'll do is we'll just allow for that to expand. And I'll just spray some in the oven just to create a bit of steam. And we'll close it. And what we'll do is we'll watch these loaves of bread rise. It's a bit tricky to see it now, but these are going to rise and expand quite a lot, substantially. So what we'll do is we'll come back once they've done that. I'm going to leave them to cook at 240 degrees for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Then what I'm going to do is turn the temperature down to about 180, and then I'm going to let them cook for about half an hour, 40 minutes, or until I see that the color is where I want it to be. Alrighty, so it's been about 45 minutes to an hour since we've put the first loaves in the oven. So what we're going to do now is take them out. So just bear with me for a second. And there you go. What we'll do is we'll quickly put them on the mesh racks that we use for the pizza. There we go, look at that. And we'll look at these in a second. Close the oven. Sorry, just excuse me for a second. I know this is a bit crazy. Alright, so here you go. Here's a loaf of bread. with the cat's tail in the way. There you go, look at that. So there's my hand there, so you can see how long it is. So it's a proper loaf of bread. So you can see from 600 grams what we've gotten. I probably need to get a little bit more color on them, but they're quite solid. Let me get a knife so you can sort of hear it. You can hear how crusty it is. It's nice and crusty. So it's quite hot. So the bottom of it, you can see how nicely it's cooked. So yeah, they're nice loaves. Look at that. And the other thing I want to point out, see how they've risen quite high. So because we use these for sandwiches for the kids, for school, and they toast it in the morning for breakfast. They use it as toast. They actually prefer this over the store-bought bread. Yeah, so that's why we've put a lot of yeast in there. And when we've packed the loaves of bread to rise, we've packed them tightly together so they could rise up as opposed to out. So you can achieve like a nice round slice. Because if it flattens out, and I'll show you what I mean by that. I've got, here you go. So this is some that I made, sorry, excuse me for a second. Like this is some that I made last week. Here you go, so this is last week's. So you can see this one here didn't rise. See how it's really flat compared to that? See how flat it is? So you can't really make sandwiches with that. I mean, you know, we're toasting it and using it as breakfast toast, but yeah, this one didn't puff up as much because I didn't put as much yeast. Yeah, so that's the reason why we put all that yeast that I put in there. Though it's still nice bread, it's soft, moist, but yeah, it's not the same as this one here. So if you're going to make it, definitely follow the recipe as I've done so. And as you can see also, see how where I've cut it, it's opened up where I've cut it, and it's not split. If you don't put the water, you get like tears or splits along the edges, and then you get all the internal crumb spill out like as if you've cut the guts of the bread. So now it's cooling down. It's making a bit of popping sound as it's cooling because the crust is nice and solid. But anyway, all right, so we'll come back. I'll show you once it's all baked. Okay, so I've started cutting the bread up now. It's had time to cool down since I've baked the bread. As you can see, we've got some already cut up and in bags, ready to go into the freezer. So what I do is once I cut it up, I immediately freeze it so that way it locks in that freshness. Yes, won't be as crispy as it is right now, but that's the reality of when you freeze bread really, and you're making it in big batches. I'm not baking it every day just to have crispy bread. Just trying to have good bread. And it's cheaper than having to buy it from the shop as well. So what I'll do is I'll cut it up and we'll have a look at what it looks like inside it. It's really crispy. So just hopefully the sound comes through on the microphone. And you know, when I'm cutting this up, it's making a mess because it's so crispy. Little shards of crust and flour is just flying everywhere. So just bear with me. I'm just going to quickly give it a cut, and then I'll show you the inside of the bread. So what I'll do, I'll just stop it there. I'll just take this slice out so you can see, and it's really moist and soft inside, and it's just got that nice crust formed on the outside, which is really crispy. Yeah, so it's really nice bread, and you can see what I said about earlier. See how it's a more usable slice to make a sandwich out of it, or try the recipe that I've shown you today and see what kind of results you get. Yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys, some feedback if you do try this recipe, and just to see if it has worked out for you. Look, I've tried many that you see online, and look, the flour, the water, everything changes. Even the type of salt that I'm using, or the brand, all those little things can contribute to give you a slightly different result. The oven that I'm using, just because the temperature is 240 degrees, different brand ovens work slightly different. Obviously the size of the oven as well can impact how it turns out. I baked it on refractory stone. They're just the ones that came out of my uni oven. It's just easier, just set them up and just clean them and then put them back into the uni oven, which I'm not using anyway at the moment. So yeah, hopefully that's giving you a good, not only a good recipe worth trying for bread, or for ciabbata, but also, yeah, just to show you the mixer 1 year on. Look, still very happy with the mixer. I've had no issues with it at all. Just the learning curve of just understanding how to get the results that you want from it. Just because you see guys mix with a spiral mixer on the internet doesn't mean that you're just going to go and copy exactly what they've done and get that result immediately. It takes a little bit of finessing and just understanding how to get that result. But once you get it right, which doesn't take too long compared to the planetary mixer, which, yeah, is a constant battle to try and achieve it because you don't get that consistent result. Yeah, so if you have any questions, always happy for you guys to drop me a line and or a comment and just ask away anything you want. I'll try to answer it as best as I can. And I'll try and bring you some more videos. Also, if there is anything that you want me to make a video of, yeah, just let me know and I will try and do that if I know how to. And yeah, so thank you once again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.